right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We are going to hang out for a little while, talk about protein, and hopefully learn some things. So thanks for taking time out of your day to be here and learn about things for your health. I think it's really great that you guys are here. So I'm Nicole Freyschlag, and I'm a functional nutritionist. So I wanted to just kind of introduce myself first because I'm a newer face around here and explain what a functional nutritionist is. So I have my master's in human nutrition and functional medicine. So it's combining nutrition, right, using food to heal us, to feel better, with kind of a broader, more holistic things that we can do to feel better. So I also look at sleep and stress and exercise, as well as food and supplements. So it's a much broader view of what nutrition is rather than just, you need to eat this and not that and that type of thing. So that's kind of where I come from. Also, my background, my first degree was in chemistry, so I'm a chemist at heart. I do have a little bit of data, a little bit of science, but I'm not going to go too much into it. I still want to keep this practical. And then I was a high school teacher for a long time before I got into nutrition. So also, the teacher in me will kind of come out. There will be a test afterwards, so make sure that you're taking notes. You guys laughed so fast at that, and no one thought I was serious. No, we'll keep this light. We'll keep it fun. Again, the goal is just to give you some practical tips that you can take home from this. So that's the idea. Also, as kind of a general disclaimer before, especially in functional nutrition, it's all about personalized care. So for a talk like this, obviously I didn't know who exactly was going to be here, so I'm giving kind of general advice, general tips. If this piques your interest and you want to know how to make this more personalized for you, you can set up an appointment with me, and then we can go over it, kind of get a better holistic picture of you and what's going to be best for you. So again, we are going to talk a little bit about numbers, but know that it's general advice, and then we could work, if you want to personalize it for you. Okay, let's jump in. Quick agenda as we get started. Today we're going to talk about why we need protein, what happens if we don't get enough, right? Why is this so important to make sure that we're getting enough? And then what does enough mean? How much is enough? How do we actually get that? And then I'm also going to talk about creatine, the benefits of creatine. It's a really good add-on as we're looking at increasing protein and supplementing protein. It's going to help us meet a lot of the same goals as protein. And then at the end, we've got some samples for you guys to try of some little drink treats that we have with protein powder. And then we'll, of course, have time for questions. But also, as I'm going, if you have questions as I go through, please feel free to ask them. So starting with the why. Why are we here today to learn about protein? Why is this an important thing for you guys? First is kind of the more traditional, what you guys might think of. Tissue repair and growth, bone health, muscle growth and function, right? We need a lot of protein because we want to be strong, right? We want to increase our muscle mass, increase our muscle function. But that is not all. I think that's kind of typically what people think about, but protein can do so much more than that. So we also look at other systems of the body, our enzymes. So a little bit of chemistry, promise not too much, but enzymes are molecules in our bodies that help reactions take place, right? So your body wants to do this reaction, whether it's building muscle, building bone, metabolizing the food that you eat, absorbing nutrients. All these reactions need enzymes to be able to make them happen. They're kind of like catalysts, right? Enzymes are proteins. Enzymes are made of protein. So many different reactions in our body, and we need protein to be able to make those happen. Also, hormone production, immune system function, these things all require proteins. And then transporting nutrients, providing energy to the body's cells, right? So not just we think kind of big picture, yes, I want to have enough energy, but your tiny little cells also need enough energy to do what they want to do. Then we can also look at weight management, healthy metabolism. So protein is also really crucial for weight management. I think this is just kind of coming more into the mainstream. A lot of times historically when people were thinking about weight management, especially weight loss, they were thinking we just focus on carbs and fats and low carb and high fat and all the different things. And protein is really kind of coming to the front now. We see a lot of research of how important protein is for weight management as well. And again, just healthy metabolism, even if it's that's not what we're looking for. So what happens if we don't get enough, right? We can say, hey, we need this, but what really are the consequences if we don't have enough protein? So again, kind of starting with our typical strength, right? If we don't have enough protein, we can see muscle loss, muscle weakness. We can look at our immune system. We see an increased risk for infections if we don't have enough protein. Bone health, we see an increased risk for fractures. There's several different mechanisms where enough protein is supporting your bones. Hormones, hormonal imbalances, especially in women, especially in menopausal, postmenopausal women. We see an impact on hormones. Overall vitality, so just fatigue, low energy. Again, your tiny little cells need the protein, and so do you. And then we also see mental impacts. And this is, again, something that's pretty new in the research that we're seeing. But if we don't have enough protein, we see mood changes, potentially depression, anxiety, we see brain fog. So protein is necessary to make neurotransmitters. If you guys have heard of serotonin and dopamine, right? We need sufficient protein to make those. So it's pretty interesting, the research coming out about this, how these are really directly related. All right, so I told you I was going to do a little bit of science. We're going to look at a couple papers just to really drive these points home. So in this study, we see that muscle strength remains fairly constant in adulthood. So in this graph, we have a measurement of muscle strength measured by hand grip strength. And then down here we have age group. So this is 18 to 19, going in increments of about 5 years up to 80. Okay, so you see, and this, males are up here, females are here. But we see our strength remains fairly constant until about here, right? Until about 40, 45. And then we see a very significant, almost linear decrease across the board, right? So that's pretty significant of, hey, if we're not really intentional about this, if we're not fighting against this with adequate protein and exercise, this is what we can expect to happen as we age. So to add some numbers to this, by age 75, participants in this study had 6 to 7% less muscle mass. Like, okay, 6 to 7%, a little bit less muscle mass overall, but 60% less muscle strength. So now that gets pretty significant, right? Think of things that you want to lift and carry right now, and as you age, right, by age 75, if you have 60% less strength, 30% lower physical performance, right? So we see measurements across the board. Again, this is just kind of what to expect, what happens naturally as we age. It doesn't have to be that way, right? This is just, if we're not being really intentional, exercise and protein, this is what we're working against here. So a couple other statistics here. Muscle strength and function. So when they measured people's muscle strength and their performance, this effectively predicted mobility decline, disability, and mortality. So what that means is the less muscle strength people had, the more likely they were to have mobility issues, right? Mobility decline. You can't get around as easy, disability, and mortality. So they were dying earlier if they don't have as much enough protein intake. Muscle strength. This is directly related to muscle strength. So again, how do we combat this, right? Because we don't want that to just be, sorry guys, this is what's happening, see ya. What can we do about it? So exercise, right? Hugely important. So we're going to connect exercise and protein. These are the things that are going to help us work against this. So weight-bearing aerobic exercise is really important. Jogging, walking, stair climbing. This is great, of course, for overall health, for metabolic health. Flexibility, stability, balance, all these things are really important, especially as we age. If we want to really work on supporting our bones, then we need to combine this with resistance training and strength training. The studies show that's your best bet, is the combination of this weight-bearing aerobic, so you're putting pressure on those bones, as well as with the resistance and strength training. So we see this being most important for bone density, for maintaining that, increasing that as we age. And what I really want to point out here is that lifting heavy weights is what's important. So it's all about the max weight, the maximum force that's exerted on your muscles, and therefore they're pulling on your bones and creating that stimulus for your bones to grow. That's what we really want. And to get that stimulus, we got to lift heavy, right? So it's more about the max weight than it is the number of reps. So if you're thinking, okay, I can use 5-pound weights and I can do sets of 15, great, I feel good. It's going to be way better for your bones if we can switch that and use 15 pounds for 5 reps, okay, or go even higher. But that max weight is what's really important. So I think that is something that is not maybe talked about a lot, is especially as we age, we should be lifting heavier and heavier. We kind of think, oh, the big gym bros, they're the young, healthy guys, they're lifting the big weights. As we age, we should really be focusing on lifting those heavier weights. And of course, disclaimer, please don't just go out tomorrow and be lifting huge, crazy heavy weights. Do this under supervision of a trainer, have them give you a program, kind of work up towards that, right? Okay, and then to connect this back to protein, right? So we see, okay, we want to increase our muscle strength. How do we do that? Exercise for sure, but also protein intake. So research shows insufficient protein intake leads to muscle loss and functional decline. So not just that the muscle is smaller, is getting broken down, but we see functional decline. I mean, we can't do as much as if we don't have sufficient protein intake. We don't really have a storage mechanism in our body to actively or inactively store protein the same way that we do for carbs and fats, right? If we eat more of those, our body's like, cool, I'll hold on to this so I can use it when I need it. Can't really do that for protein. So we need to be eating it daily, right, in order to get it. Because if we eat too much, then our kidneys will just filter it out, right? But if we don't eat enough, then our bodies will take from what we already have and break things down to be able to get that protein to function. So we don't want that to happen, right? We don't want to break down the muscles, we want to grow them and the bones. All right, so I don't know if anyone has heard of this. This is the Centenarian Decathlon, and it's on one of your handouts. This was created by Peter Attia, who's a doctor, and he wrote a book called Outlive. Has anyone read it? Just curious? Yeah, great, awesome. If you haven't, I highly encourage you to pick it up. It's all about longevity and how to improve your health span. So not just your lifespan of how can I live longer, but my health span. How can I be healthy and functioning for as long as I live? So his question with this is, hey, if I want to live to be 100, what do I want to be able to do when I'm 100? So he makes a list of, these are his top 10 things, but you can make way more, but it's the 10 that makes it the decathlon. That he's saying, hey, when I'm 100, or if the last decade of my life, we'll say, I want to be able to hike 1.5 miles on a hilly trail. I want to be able to pick up a 30-pound child. So here he's thinking, hey, my grandkids. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids and play with them, and that kind of thing. So you can look at this list. Another one I like is thinking about travel. Hey, when I get older, I want to be able to travel independently. So some of that is walking around. Maybe think about lifting your suitcase into the overhead compartment. So the goal with this is to think about it now and say, hey, if we think back to that graph where our muscle strength was decreasing as we get older, then I need to be able to do more than this now, right? Because if we know there is some amount of decline in muscle mass, then think more. So if he's saying, hey, I want to hike 1.5 miles by the time I'm 85, then when I'm 65, I need to be able to hike 3 miles or 5 miles, right? So that's what you train for now so that then you can do these things as you get older. So gave you that handout. I encourage you to think about that and kind of make your own list, right? And this is all supposed to be based off of things that you want to be able to do as you get older. Is it playing with grandkids? Is it traveling? Is it cooking yourself meals, so you're putting ingredients or getting things from the shelf, that kind of thing. Just think about what you want to do and then plan for that now. Okay, this is the last graph, the last little research graph. But again, just trying to really bring these points home. So first is this point. People in this study who had a protein intake that represented less than 15% of their total daily calories, right? So we have our total calories, some amount is from protein, some is from carbs, some is from fat. So if less than 15% of that was from protein, then we saw people age 65 and older had almost 3 times, so an odds ratio of 2.86, almost a 3-time increased risk of osteoporotic fractures. So that's pretty significant, right? Just correlated with their protein intake. On a positive note, we can see that a protein intake can improve things, you would think, right? Less protein, we have issues. More protein, we see less of those issues. So this study is called the chair stand test. And again, we have the same age groups along the bottom. And this is in seconds. So this is measuring how long it takes people to stand up out of a chair. So you sitting in the chair with your arms folded in front of you, to stand up, sit down 5 times, okay, as fast as you can. Then they're timing how long that takes. So again, we see about 6 seconds, pretty consistent until middle age, about 45, and then we see an increase in time, right? It takes them longer, okay, as you get older. So our functional abilities are declining because it takes us longer to do the same thing. Good news, again, whey protein intake, so this was 20 grams of protein, so they're increasing protein intake by 20 grams. They were able to get 1 second faster in just 13 weeks with no increase in exercise, right? Of course, we're recommending do the exercise as well, but with just 20 grams, that's like 1 protein shake of whey protein, they were able to get 1 second faster. And if we look at this, I'm not going to make you analyze this too much, but 1 second brings us down almost a decade. right, as far as our age here on the bottom. So pretty significant. So I was thinking we could have a little fun here this morning, and we could try this, okay? So I want you guys to try the sit-stand test. If you do not want to, if you are not able, watch the person next to you. You can help time the person next to you. So if you have a stopwatch, if you have one on your phone, you're going to do this 5 times, but you have to time yourself because everyone's going to end up at different times, okay? So I'll give you a second to kind of get your watches ready. Again, you can help the person next to you if you want to. All right, so getting into the nitty-gritty. Hopefully I've made a case for protein is important. We want to increase this as we age. So how do we do that, right? Getting practical. So the RDA, this is the recommended daily allowance in the US here, recommends 0.36 grams per pound. This is per pound of total body weight, 0.36 grams. This is based on young, healthy adults and is only enough to prevent deficiency. So like acute deficiency, we are wasting away because we don't have enough protein. So this is absolute minimum. We see a lot of new studies showing that this is quite insufficient for optimal health, for even maintaining muscle mass and bone mass, and especially as we age. Again, this was done in young adults. So as we age over 25, we see that this is not going to be enough. So I'm going to give you some new numbers for recommendations. One other just statistic to kind of bring this point home is looking at muscle protein synthesis. So what is the stimulus to our muscles to help them grow, right? We have things where they're catabolic and breaking down or anabolic and they're building. That's the muscle protein synthesis. Older adults require 2 times the protein to get the same amount of muscle protein synthesis stimulus as young adults. So think if you are 25 and it takes 15 grams of proteins to get this stimulus, when you are 65, it will take 30 grams of protein to get that same stimulus. So twice as much protein as we get older. So this is why this is so important. So calculating how to get enough. So on the back of the sheet that says the protein scoop, on the back of that, you can kind of see this. If you have a pen and you want to do the calculation for yourself now, you can, or you can take it home and look at it later. But of course, my first disclaimer is that it depends, right? So your particular protein needs depend on your weight, your age, any other health conditions that you have, how much you're exercising, how much you're sleeping, all of that kind of stuff. But if we want some general recommendations, we could go by percent of daily calories. So we saw that study that said that less than 15% was insufficient, right? Was put us at 3 times greater risk of fractures. So we definitely want to be above that. So 20 to 30% of total daily calories. If you're someone who knows how many calories you consume or are aiming for that, if you're not, don't worry about that one. We can also go by weight, okay? So starting with your weight in pounds, and then we're gonna multiply by a factor. So what's interesting here, if you are an athlete, if you're exercising most days a week, you don't have to be a professional athlete, but if you're exercising most days a week, your body is actually more sensitive to the protein that you're taking in. Okay, so kind of think insulin sensitivity versus insulin resistance, but as you're exercising, your cells are more able to take that in and use that stimulus for muscle protein synthesis. So if you're an athlete, you're gonna multiply by between 0.7 and 0.9. So you're taking that times your body weight, and that's gonna give you grams of protein to eat. So if someone is 150 pounds, and we say they're a young athlete, times 0.7, that's 109 grams of protein a day. If you are mostly sedentary, which means especially think about if you have a job where you're sitting for most of the day and you maybe exercise for 30 minutes, but you're sedentary most of the rest of the day, or just because that's what you're doing, then you need to be taking in more protein. And older adults or those aiming for weight loss should be multiplying by aiming for the higher end of that range. So kind of contrary to what you might think, the person who needs the most protein is actually an older sedentary adult. Again, disclaimer, this is not, if you're bodybuilding and you're trying to win a competition, then you're gonna need to be on a higher range, but I'm assuming that's probably not our audience today. But if you are, good for you. I support that. So we could also say, okay, if we're 150 pounds, but we're older and sedentary, then we would multiply by 1, and we're actually gonna aim for 150 grams of protein a day, which is a lot. Want to make sure that I say that. Anything over 100, you have to be really intentional. it is hard just kind of going about your daily life to get over 100 grams, okay? But especially in menopausal and postmenopausal women, we see a metabolic threshold at 100 grams. So under 100 grams, you're not going to get these metabolic benefits, especially in, like I said, menopausal, postmenopausal women. We got to get over 100 to see those benefits. So how do we do that, right? We might be like, oh, okay, that's kind of a lot of grams of protein. So we'll spread it out, right? So aim for 30 grams of protein per meal. There's also great research saying that there is kind of a threshold here with 30 grams that we want to get at least that per meal, and especially at breakfast. Okay, so overnight, you're fasting, right, because we don't eat overnight. When you wake up, your muscles are in a catabolic state, meaning they're more in the breakdown state rather than the build muscle. And they will stay catabolic until you get at least 30 grams of protein. So if you're not getting that until lunch, or maybe not getting that in dinner, then your muscles have been slightly catabolic, meaning breaking down all day until you get that 30 grams of protein. So let's nip that in the bud right first thing in the morning, get our protein. Again, looking at hormone support, we will see a lot of improvements with that if we can get the protein in earlier in the day. So aiming for 30 grams. So of course, if I do 30 at each meal and I have 3 meals, that gets me to 90 grams. So then we just need one more protein snack to get us over 100 grams for the day. So again, because over 100 grams is overwhelming, it is difficult to do, I will admit that, we can supplement, right? So it doesn't just have to be eat a chicken breast at every meal and for your 2 p.m. snack, right? We can use supplements. So we'll talk more about specific supplements. We can look at protein powders to help get us there. Next is think about upgrading your snacks. So this is a great way, typical American diet, most of our snacks are high carb, high protein, right? We're grabbing a granola bar or some toast or some chips or something like that, right? High fat, high carbs. If we can swap those to be high protein, then that's again really going to help us reach our goals. And one of your handouts on the back of the Centenarian Decathlon, I've got a bunch of high protein snacks. And then celebrate progress, right? So I definitely do not want this to sound like we all have to go do this right now and tomorrow you have to hit your 120 grams. Any progress is great progress, right? So if we can, at minimum, just be intentional about thinking about protein more. I'm not necessarily an advocate that everyone should be counting calories or grams of protein or anything every single day, right? Let's just be intentional about it, know that it's supporting our health, and that we'll see progress and improvement from that, right? And benefits. So doesn't have to be perfect. Any improvement is good. So if we're aiming for 30 grams of protein in a meal, what does 30 grams look like, right? If you're not used to counting that, that can just kind of seem like a random number. So I wanted to give you some visuals of how you can get that 30 grams. So animal meat is going to be a great, easy source, right? Any of these, so 4 ounces of chicken breast, 1 can of tuna, 4 ounces of pork chop, ground beef, ground turkey, that's going to get us our 30 grams. So 1 serving pretty much of meat will get us our 30 grams. So a lot of people, again, kind of typical American diet, they're doing this already at dinner. So sometimes we're like, dinner's great, you don't have to worry about dinner. Let's increase lunch a little bit, let's increase breakfast. Eggs, okay, a lot of people like to have eggs for breakfast. It is going to take you 5 eggs to get your 30 grams, okay? And I am not recommending that you go out and have 5 eggs for every single breakfast. Maybe 2, but then you can combine eggs with other sources, right? So take some things from over here, add these, maybe you have a little bit of meat with your eggs to get you to that 30 grams. Plant sources. So I'm not going to spend too much time going into sources. On one of your handouts, the protein scoop, it explains sources. So we want to get complete protein, which means it has all the 9 essential amino acids that your body needs. Our meat sources are going to give us that complete protein. Plant sources are typically incomplete, so they're missing some of those amino acids, but you can combine them to get complete proteins. Okay, so it works out wonderfully that like rice is low in some amino acids, but beans are high in those exact amino acids that rice is low in, and a lot of times we'll combine rice and beans. So if you do that, then you're getting a complete protein, okay? So again, just some examples of plant sources. It'll take 1.5 cups of cooked lentils, 1.5 cups of tofu, 2 cups of black beans, which is kind of a lot for one meal, 1.5 cups of edamame, and that is shelled edamame. So again, thinking you don't have to get this full amount in one meal, but how can we combine things? Take some from here and some from there so that we can get to our 30 grams. And then dairy is also going to be a great source. I really like Greek yogurt because it just tends to be higher in protein. You could also do the Icelandic yogurt. What is it called? Siggy's. Yeah, Siggy's is a great one. It's high, similar to Greek yogurt. But even, so this is, an example of a great swap. Maybe you have yogurt for breakfast, you have yogurt and berries and nuts or something. You could swap a regular, dairy, full dairy yogurt for Greek yogurt, and you could go from getting 6 grams of protein in a serving to getting 18. And even between Greek yogurts, look at the labels, find ones that have the most. I was looking yesterday, there was one Greek yogurt that only has like 8 grams of protein. I like Fage, I think that's how you say it. It's 18 grams of protein in a serving. So just that switch can really help increase your protein intake. Cottage cheese, even around a cup of cheese, it varies a little bit based on the type of cheese. So again, I'm not just saying go have a cup of cheese at every meal, but we could take some cheese and sprinkle it on our eggs that we're baking, right? We could add a little bit of rice and beans on the side, and now we're able to get to that 30 grams. Okay, then I mentioned high protein snacks, so you have this handout as well of just kind of thinking of making these swaps. Can I switch from a carb-heavy granola bar? These bars are really great. They're kind of like a thick beef jerky. It's just meat. Again, our Greek yogurt, protein drink. So again, thinking about supplementing. I really like this brand. It's called Only What You Need, OWYN. And these are plant-based protein that gets you 32 grams, right? So we're thinking about, okay, if we have 30 at each meal plus a snack, that 30 grams puts us over the edge. Okay, I'm not going to go through all this because they're all on your handout. All right, before I jump into creatine, any questions so far? There is a threshold there that we see, again, for muscle protein synthesis, that we can stimulate that if we have over 30 grams in a meal. If you get 25, you're great. You're still doing good. And there's a lot of questions about how exactly to spread it out, if it should be around your workouts and all of that. And the research is pretty unclear. We see some saying, yes, we want to make sure we get that protein in immediately after the workout, at least 10 to 15 grams after the workout. I think that's generally really good advice. There are some papers showing that maybe that doesn't have a huge impact, that as long as we get it in the 24-hour period, it's going to be great. So the other kind of aim with at least 30 is it just helps us meet our over 100 grams for the day, where we see that metabolic threshold.
Any harm in doing more than 30?
Nope, you can absolutely do more. Yeah, you can do 40, 50, 60 in a meal. There is a threshold for specifically muscle protein synthesis of the benefits you'll get. I think it's around 40, but we can still get all the other benefits of protein when we're above that. All right, so diving into creatine. So switching gears just a little bit. How many of you have heard of creatine? And in what context have you heard about creatine? Yeah, for working out. It's really common in the bodybuilding world. I think that's kind of where it got its original fame. But there is a ton more research now showing that it is not just bodybuilders who benefit from creatine. So that's kind of what I want to explain. So first, creatine is a naturally occurring compound. So again, we usually hear about it as supplements, but it is naturally occurring. So you're eating it in foods like meat and fish. Your body is also producing it. You're producing creatine monohydrate. It plays a key role in energy production. So again, this is where we typically think of it of this high intensity activity. Weightlifting, I'm doing my 1 rep max, I'm trying to hit that big number. I need creatine to be able to do that. And what it does is it helps your body regenerate ATP. So if you remember ATP from like your high school biology, biochemistry maybe, adenosine triphosphate, this is the body's energy source, right? This is like the currency of energy in your body. So we can only store a certain amount of ATP in our body, and then we use it as we're like doing our bench press, turns into ADP, and then we have to regenerate the ATP. And phosphocreatine, so the storage form of creatine in our muscles, is what helps that regeneration. So the more creatine we have, the more we can regenerate that ATP and have the energy to be able to do that, rep 8, 9, and 10. Actually, we see it even after rep like 3 to 4 if we're lifting weights. So that's kind of our high intensity, but we also see it with endurance workouts. So we see that creatine is anti-catabolic. So catabolic meaning breaking down, so it helps not helps your muscles not break down, feels like a double negative, and it's anti-inflammatory. So we see that it improves recovery from endurance workouts. So that's, again, some exciting new research that's coming out, is it's not just about these bursts of high intensity, it's also about helping us recover from the endurance workouts. So some more research on the benefits of creatine, kind of like we looked at protein in all these different areas of the body, we can do the same with creatine. So improving exercise performance, directly increasing muscle mass, maintaining or improving bone mass. So again, we see improvements on bone with both of these things. Improving daily function, reducing fatigue, supporting muscle mass in aging adults. So again, when we think about our centenarian decathlon, our activities of daily living, carrying the groceries, putting the suitcase up into the overhead bin, all those types of things, we see improvements in that daily function with creatine supplementation. And what's really cool is that we see improvements both in those who are exercising and those who are not. So again, ideally, we are adding protein and creatine and we're increasing exercise, we're lifting heavy weights, we're doing all of that. But even in those who were not exercising, just supplementing creatine, we see an improvement, just like we saw with the whey protein supplementation. We see a faster recovery between workouts. And we also see enhanced brain function, memory, and processing speed. And this is a lot of the kind of cutting edge new research about creatine that is super exciting, these impacts on brain. I was listening to a podcast of one of the top creatine researchers, and he was talking about how he uses extra creatine to even help with things like jet lag. Or if you just have a really bad night's sleep, wake up the next morning, double your creatine dose and take it, you'll have a clear mind for the day. Or you're giving like a big presentation, increase your creatine. Or you know you have something stressful coming up that you want to prepare for, you can just increase for the day before, and we'll see those improvements in brain function, which is so cool for just an easy little scoop. So how do we take creatine? The form, you always want to look for creatine monohydrate. This is the natural form that your body is making and using. So that's the form that we want. This is the form that all the best research is on. There is not at this moment any research proving that other forms are as effective as creatine monohydrate. Then how much? So we're going to shoot for 5 grams a day. This is going to allow us to saturate our muscle stores of creatine. And it'll take about 21 to 30 days to saturate your muscle stores. So for the first month, we do 5 grams and we can see that. If you guys have looked into creatine or heard about it, sometimes people will do a loading phase. So they'll do 20 grams a day for the first week and then go down to 5. That is great if you have a weightlifting competition that you are trying to prepare for. You can do the loading phase. If you're just looking for these overall benefits to daily life, you do not need to do the loading phase. Again, it'll just take 21 to 30 days to saturate those muscle stores. If we want to go above and beyond just the muscle performance, 10 grams a day is going to allow us to get those bone and brain. So it's kind of like once your muscles have all they need, then the extra creatine can go to your brain and go to your bones. You could start with 10 grams a day, kind of here in my any risks. Some people will see a little bit of water retention with the 20 grams loading dose. So if you want to avoid that, just start slower. Very few people get GI distress, but if you're someone who's very sensitive to things, start with the 5 grams. You can even divide it. So you could do like 2.5 in the morning, 2.5 at night. Give yourself a week to kind of acclimate to that. And then when to take it. So anytime, consistency is key for maintaining the saturation in your muscles. But there are some studies showing that you might see additional benefits if you have it right after your workout. So if you're able to do that and after your workout, you can do a little protein shake, put your scoop of creatine in there. That's probably where you will see the maximum benefits. But if it's hard, that's difficult for you, wherever I think you can fit it into your routine, just for consistency's sake, is going to be great. And then, again, a little bit disclaimer, if you've heard about creatine, some of the early studies, they thought they were seeing impacts on kidney function. And part of that is because creatine metabolizes into creatinine, which is a marker of kidney function, and they saw that increase. So they were like, oh no, there's an issue with the kidneys. But if you take away the creatine, that number goes right back down. So we haven't actually damaged the kidneys. It's just that we see more of the waste product because we've broken down more creatine. But I still want to give the disclaimer, if you have kidney disease, consult with your doctor before taking creatine. Okay, so then thinking about supplements. So these apply for protein powder and for creatine. So as far as just making sure that you guys are well-educated, kind of a holistic approach here is how do we choose supplements? It's like, great, I went to this talk, I want to get protein. Not all protein powders are created equal. Even not all creatine supplements are created equal. So some things you want to look for. Third-party testing. There's a company or an organization called Clean Label that does certification. They do heavy metals testing, mold testing, all that kind of thing. So you want to make sure there's third-party testing. If it's just the company testing it, it's a little, some of them do a great job, but it's a little bit harder to, prove. So we want to avoid any lack of testing. And we want to look for natural ingredients and especially natural sweeteners. So a ton of protein powders will put artificial sugars like sucralose, aspartame in there, and those are just really not great for your body. They're not great metabolically. They can mess with the microbiome. A lot of people are sensitive to them, so we really want to avoid those. Do you have a question on that?
It's just clean. When you say Clean Label certified, does that say on the package? How
Yeah.
do you know that?
There will be, it's kind of like organic, things like have a particular label that it will say Clean Label certified. Yeah. So then also just companies you can trust. So when we have a bunch of supplements here and we vet these companies, and you can learn a lot about a company, learn about their testing, about their studies done on their products, and then you're kind of like, great, I know this company does a great job and I can trust the things that they do. So that's also why we sell supplements, is so that you guys know that we've done that work and we have vetted them, and you can trust them. As far as buying things from Amazon, I want to give a disclaimer to that as well, is there are great products on Amazon. Yes, some of them you can trust, but unfortunately, a lot of people are taking products from companies or taking things that are not from a trusted company and putting fake labels on them. So we talked to, actually recently in our office, a supplement company, and they're legally going after people who are doing this because they're selling things that are not at all what the label claims, but they put a fake label, right? You can do so much with graphic design and AI and things like that, that it looks like it's from a trusted company, but it's actually not that at all. So buyer beware as far as what you're finding on Amazon. Again, that's part of why we like to provide things for you guys so you know that you can trust it. And then lastly, for creatine, the most well-studied form of creatine is called CreaPure. Has the most research done on it, comes out of Germany, most testing done on it. So CreaPure is ideal.
Is that a brand or what is that?
It's not a brand, it is a type of creatine. So a brand like this, so we offer this one made by Thorne, and it uses CreaPure creatine in it. It is difficult to find. Some of them do a better job of labeling that they've used CreaPure than others, but yeah, that's what you're looking for. So I want to talk about the ones that we have for you guys to sample. So we have a new whey protein powder. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's over there on the shelf. And this is from grass-fed cows in New Zealand. So they're just living their best life on the beautiful green hills in New Zealand. It all has clean ingredients, and it dissolves really well in water and milk, and it doesn't have any taste. So it doesn't have any additional sweeteners in it. And you get 24 grams of protein in a serving. So a serving is a quarter of a cup, 24 grams. So again, thinking, hey, if I'm trying to upgrade my snacks, a lot of protein bars might have 7 grams of protein or 10, but a lot of extra carbs and fat and calories that we might not want, we could use some whey protein and get 24 grams. Or again, trying to get to that 30 grams for breakfast, we can put this in a little smoothie, really easy to hit those goals. If you'd like a vegan option, so some people, right, don't do dairy the way here. Truvani, that's these kind of on the colorful bags up there. This is a great company. Again, we have researched it. We trust it. They do good testing and have great ingredients. It is slightly sweetened with monk fruit. So again, avoiding those artificial sugars. They have a great variety of flavors. It is vegan, and it is 20 grams of protein per scoop. So again, a really good option. So we have 2 different little protein drinks that we've made for you guys to try. So one is we did the whey protein powder with some unsweetened chocolate almond milk to try that. And then the other one is Miranda's going to make a little smoothie with the Truvani. Their newest flavor is that yellow bag. I think it's called lemon cookie, which is kind of fun. So we're going to make a little smoothie with lemon cookie with almond milk, frozen blueberries, and frozen bananas, which is a nice little refreshing treat. Miranda and I were saying, like, after you're outside on a nice hike, come back and make your little blueberry lemon shake. So those are what we have for you guys to try. All right, so wrapping up take-home points. Protein is crucial for health and wellness for a wide range of things, right? Maintaining, growing muscle mass, weight loss, healthy aging, maintaining our functionality, all of that. So here are my specific take-home calls to action, my goals for you guys. Aim to get at least 30 grams of protein at each meal. Think about upgrading your snacks to have them be higher protein. Aim for over 100 grams a day, right? So you can do the calculation. Maybe you're aiming for 130, 140, but start with just over 100 if we can be intentional and try to get to that. And then consider adding creatine. It's just a really easy, you can add, oh, I forgot to mention, you can buy it as a powder or in capsules. To get the 5 grams a day, usually you have to take like 5 capsules, which I find to be kind of a lot. So I prefer the powder. It mixes really well. It dissolves easily, tasteless. You know, I don't even notice it. Just mix it in my little drink. Okay, any questions? Yeah, so collagen is a great add-on. Collagen is not a complete protein. So it only has, I think, 4 or 5 of the 9 essential amino acids. So if we're using collagen to try to meet our protein goals, we're gonna need to combine other things to get that complete protein, or it can be an add-on on top of that. So say, hey, great, I got to my 35 grams of protein in my smoothie. Great, we can throw some collagen on top. You're still gonna get extra nitrogen, so you need the 9 essential amino acids, and then you need just extra nitrogen on top of that to synthesize other amino acids. So we get that nitrogen from it. We're still getting some of those amino acids. So yeah, great bonus, but not a complete source. Well, thanks so much for being here today, for listening and having questions. And we've got samples over here if you guys want to try some. Thanks, everyone.